would start out by reading. I published a couple of books with Alan G. Collaborative poems. We started writing these here at the University of Florida together. And Alan was fresh out of William and Mary, studying with Henry. He was 22 years old. I was 35 years old. He was a Buddhist. Was kind of a violin prodigy, interested in psychology. I'm an exterior poet, somewhat inbred, crawled out of the river with my family, the Warrior River. So we had very different experiences, and we realized when we were at Florida that we were kind of coming to the same conclusions in our poetry. They may have looked like different poems, but they were all coming to the same endings. So I suggested to him that we started writing 2 lines apiece and send them, even though we lived just a couple of miles away, by email. And the only rules were that you couldn't change anything about the 2 lines that came to you, and when someone said cooked, you had to end the poem, period. We ended up writing about 60, 70 of those, and then looked back at them. And once I got my job, I somehow wrote a grant for me to go to Las Vegas. He was the smart one and went to Vegas and became a professional gambler, and now he's with Cirque du Soleil. The Beatles love, he's a strap specialist. I know, he's a maniac. He's the kind of person you hate. He can do anything, He was beating out former Olympians to get these gigs, and he was not an athletic person when I knew him. So these are some poems that we wrote together. And these books are made out of this little press, Unicorn Press out of Greensboro. And the guy who he hand makes the books, and whenever he sends me a box, I'll smell them. And the first box he sent me smelled like scattered, smothered, covered in coffee. And I called him. I said, "Where did you make these books?" He said, "Why?" I said, "They smell like Waffle House." And he started laughing. He said that he spends most of his nights in Waffle House chugging free coffee and putting books together. All right, that's great. Inventory. If I could, I would erase your red pocket square, pearl cufflinks, and start with all that is untidy. The lint you left in the corners of the closet, the words you exchanged with my mother when I was sent to play. Through the screen door, I heard shouts in French and saw her hair moving side to side like a panther behind the zoo's thick glass. I used antique postcards as coasters, the washing machine as a stool for the bar, where I sat for hours thinking of loose ties and neat scotch. Donegal landscape. I think for this one too, we said it had to take place in another country, and I've been to Ireland, so. In the distance, another hummock of peat dotted with sheep, another cliff where ancients piled stones. But here the seagulls in black and white sand yield to the monoliths of wood and glass. I stare, reminded by the green of my own monotone childhood, how, by a shore in New England, seagulls dive bomb my little brother after he threw his sandwich crusts into the air, and I amused myself with the idea of making bracelets out of sandwiches so the gulls could live on my arms. Nothing is altered now. I still see him with his arms flailing like a man on fire. And how many villages here flailed in fire? How many husbands watched their wives led off by soldiers who, frenzied as seagulls, would drift into oil-colored oceans. The docks smell of spoiled fish and nothing else. When I return to the cottage, my children are playing a game with measuring cups. Tomorrow the sleet will shellac the junipers and we'll pile into a booth at the pub while locals argue over keg-line lengths and the best pint in town. The barkeep doesn't believe in string theory. He argues there is a conspiracy behind wool prices. The light never alters, muted behind clouds, a few strands falling here and there, igniting a wave or some castle ruin in a field long out of use. The scene seems stolen from a Turner. All that's missing are the horses. Where have they gone? The foreground tells us the day is done. A dog sleeps on the dirt road, his paws neatly crossed under his chin. Peat smoke drifts from the chimney. I can barely hear the water. I just noticed there that I turned that poem into an ekphrastic poem. I was starting to write the ekphrastic poems for my next collection. And it's funny how these things slip in and out.